Numbers are important in Jewish life. One thing is there was a survey released this week about Jews in America. I haven't even read it yet. The counting of the Omer ends in a couple of days. We count 50 days between Passover and Shavuot when we receive the Torah. That'll be Sunday night when we complete that. And this week we begin reading the book of Numbers in the Torah, Sefer Bamidbar. But it's not just numbers that we look at. There's a sense of the need to look at meaning behind the numbers. So with surveys, people will pick apart what do these statistics mean. With the Omer count, the Kabbalistic tradition says that each day you don't just count, but there's a meaning, something to focus on behind each week and each day. And in the Midrashic tradition, we're told that it's not just a census that goes on in the Book of Numbers. There's a few of them, right? It's a census of fighters, of men of fighting age among the people of Israel as they journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. But it's not just the numbers that get focused on. Rashi, the Midrashic tradition will say that God thinks that every life is precious, and the people of Israel are especially precious. And so, having freed them from Egypt, there's sort of this repeated counting, like somebody might count a collection of something that they love. So too, God is continually counting the people of Israel because of this affection, right? And that's all part of this tradition of making sure that we look at the meaning behind the numbers. Now, this is especially important in times like this. The tragic flare-up of violence between Israel and especially Hamas leads to, commonly, a comparison of casualty counts, which are always greater on the Palestinian side than on the Israeli side. And there are those who make a false moral argument that those who suffer more, that with greater casualties must mean moral superiority, and those who inflict greater casualties must be the party that's in the wrong. That's sloppy moral thinking. Protecting lives is not a moral negative, if anything, the opposite. And look, the Torah begins by teaching us that every life is sacred. It doesn't matter whose life, whether you agree with them or not, whether they're your ethnic group, your religion, every human life is created in the image of God. And there's something we have to remember. We can't get casual about casualty counts. It's important to know that we're supposed to maintain our moral clarity on the importance of human life. And also, we have to always look behind the numbers. We can't just look at headlines or raw data. We always have to see what the meaning behind numbers are. Because in times of war, there are human lives behind those numbers, and we have to know what's going into these numbers. That's what the tradition asks of us. So, as we mourn those who are lost in this conflict, as we pray for a just and peaceful end, and peace for the citizens of Israel and for her neighbors, we have to remember that as Jews, we're obligated not just to look at numbers, but to look deeply at the meaning behind those numbers, because if we don't do that, we're going to misunderstand the truth of what's going on, especially in tragic conflicts like this. As we say each Friday night, as we quote Psalm 29, Adonai oz la'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. May God grant God's people strength, and may God grant God's people peace. Shabbat shalom.